Robservations with Robert, Meyer, Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination, and still undefined, your existential Mr. Rogers. That's right, Robert Meyer Burnett. And I'm, of course, Robcasting at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of this, the Post-Geek Singularity community. And, you know, I have to tell you, this is Robservations episode 691. There has been a lot of upheaval in the last week in the business of entertainment. I think Hollywood's a little shook this week with the revelations of Warner Media and Discovery joining up. Everyone wondering what's going on, or as my industry guru said, people went to sleep on Friday thinking they worked for the greatest studio in Hollywood, and they woke up realizing they worked for the world's biggest reality television company. But this is what happens. This is the business we have chosen, you know, and it's been interesting. I keep thinking about what is the future of the entertainment industry? How are these companies going to work out? What is happening? And I'll tell you, as if on cue, you know, I've talked about an industry professional, somebody I hold in the highest esteem, someone who his pay grade is so far beyond mine, or whatever mine will be, that alone would make you want to listen to this person. But I admire him. I've admired him since I even knew him for many, many years, actually. And this person has been good to me. And they, I'm not going to say who, anyway, sent me an article today, and it was, as I said, as if on cue, this person thought I'd be interested in this article. It was a fascinating article from a source that I had never before encountered, much like the Starship Enterprise in the deepest reaches of unknown space. And obviously, because it comes from a venture capitalist, and he used to be a consultant for Amazon. He has his own blog. You can follow him on Twitter. His name is Matthew Ball, and I believe you can follow him on Twitter at Ball Matthew, BALLMATT, two T's, TTHEW. And I was so fascinated by this article when I read it. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be the story I need to cover today on the show, because it's, you know, it's anything, as everyone knows who watches me for any length of time, I consider myself, well, amateurish, a student of the business of Hollywood. While I, of course, have never been a great, if you looked at my career, you would say, well, Rob, for all that you study the business, you certainly haven't been a very canny navigator of that business. Well, I would like to say I've tried, but I've also, you know, I've been balancing professionalism with fanboy nerding out, so it's tough. It's a tough place to exist in. But I've still had some success. You know, we've got Dota: Dragon's Blood is on Netflix right now, that I was the animatic editor on, and, you know, Tango Shalom. If you want to go see a fun time at a drive-in, you can go see Tango Shalom, my latest feature film that I produced and edited in Washington, D.C. on the 26th. That would be a week from today. How cool is that? Anyway, that's just an excuse as to why I'm not as rich as Aaron Spelling. But anyway, so I really love this article, and it's a long article, and there are graphs and charts, and I'm going to share them with you. I hope you will enjoy this article as much as I did, because it's fantastic, and I just wanted to read it out loud. So again, this is from MatthewBall.vc, and he wrote this article, and he has it tagged under Disney and IP storytelling. He wrote this on May 5th. And again, I found this article incredibly fascinating. What is, and this is, of course, before everything that happened with Amazon potentially buying MGM, and also before the announcement of Discovery and Warner Media, although I would expect that this gentleman probably knew something about that before it happened. Anyway, here we go. Let's jump into this. In the 1960s, Theodore Levitt, a resident economist and professor at Harvard Business School, unveiled his theory of marketing myopia. Specifically, he postulated that too many companies define themselves through their products rather than the needs they fulfill. This idea has been largely remixed as job to be done theory. This mindset exposes these companies to displacement and disruption. The classic example here is the petroleum industry, which, in its obsession with fossil fuels, has missed out on solar, nuclear, geothermal, etc. Another focuses on the major railway companies of the early 20th century, which missed out on buses, cars, and trucking due to their focus on trains and not transportation. Management theories go in and out. The 1990s were particularly harsh on conglomerates, most of which struggled to show the benefits of strategy creep. Synergies sounded good and marketing myopia bad, but ultimately most blue-chip companies delivered greater shareholder returns through focus rather than tackling uncertain, if occasionally insurgent, adjacencies. The digital era has made conglomeration a little more popular. Example, Amazon. Yet for the most part, market leaders tend to be specialized. Facebook, not Google+. Shopify and Stripe, not Amazon Pay. TikTok, not Instagram. Tinder, not Facebook dating. These ideas are interesting when one considers the modern-day entertainment industry. Historically, we defined an entertainment company around its core offering. Marvel was a comic book company. Mattel, a toy company. ESPN, a sports network, etc. When people think of the classic Disney flywheel, which Walt himself devised in the 1950s, and which is the current obsession of every Hollywood executive today, they typically misremember the center of this flywheel as IP. It was actually creative talent of studio and theatrical films. Even Walt described Disney as a movie company. It's clear today that these company definitions are no longer right. Disney's theatrically focused film studio is inarguably the best in the world. It had roughly twice the revenues and 3 times the margin of the number 2 player in 2019. However, Disney Parks division generated more than twice the revenue and profit of its studio division. Disney's future, meanwhile, depends on a direct-to-consumer video platform that's mostly growing through television series and not feature films. In 2019, Hasbro bought E1 so that it could sustain, if not build, its merchandise lines such as G.I. Joe, Transformers, and Battleship into an ever-growing cinematic universe spanning TV and film. Mattel, too, is driving adaptations of its top franchises, including Barbie, Hot Wheels, and the Magic 8 Ball. Most major sports leagues now see NFTs and sports betting as the key to growth, while casinos are building out and acquiring lifestyle content publishing businesses. Marvel and DC haven't been comic book first companies for nearly 30 years. Which is kind of a bummer, to be honest. And after years of dodging the question, is Netflix a tech or a media company? Netflix founder and co-CEO Reed Hastings recently declared, "We're really an entertainment company." So, what is that? And why does it matter? And what is the takeaway? At its core, an entertainment business does only 3 things: create and tell stories, build love for those stories, and monetize that love. A good way to learn about this is through Disney. Disney leads because it's best at 1, 2, 3, which is creating and telling stories, building love for those stories, and monetize that love. Sure, Disney owns many of the best stories, but it's also the best at telling them, too. Disney's Marvel Cinematic Universe consistently outperforms the Marvel films of the 21st Century Fox and Sony, as well as comic book films of Warner Bros. DC. Back in 2016, Sony's film chief said, "We have deferred the creative lead on Spider-Man to Disney because they know what they're doing." George Lucas, who had spent decades claiming he would never sell Star Wars, has said he chose to sell Lucasfilm to Disney based on its treatment and success with Marvel. To point, Lucas solicited no other bidders for the company, and Fox, which had distributed the Star Wars franchise for 35 years, didn't even know his company was for sale. Although many argue Disney has all the IP, the fan response to Disney's Marvel films versus those of Sony and Fox is in stark contrast, as is the fact that millions of fans are happy Disney finally has the Fantastic Four and the X-Men, so they can do it right. The last two Harry Potter films were the lowest performing in the Wizarding World's 10 films, even though the global box office has grown 150% since the franchise's first release. There have been dozens of attempts from a dozen studios to adapt classic, out-of-copyright Western tales over the past 2 decades. Tarzan, 2 Robin Hoods, 2 King Arthurs, 3 Draculas, 2 Little Red Riding Hoods, 3 Snow Whites, a half-dozen Greco and Egyptian epics, 2 Jungle Books, 2 Hercules, a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. At best, these films broke even. Most lost a lot. It's hard to argue Disney would not have had greater success, and we'll soon find out. Disney is currently working on live-action adaptations of Peter Pan, Robin Hood, and The Little Mermaid. While IP matters, execution determines profit and loss. Disney is also best at developing love for IP. Here, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a great example, in part because Marvel couldn't launch its CU using its most popular comic book characters, which competitors like Sony owned. The first few films were relatively modest performers, yet as brand equity was built, average performance soared even as output nearly tripled. Over its first 5 years, Phase 1, the Marvel Cinematic Universe released an average of 1.2 films per year and grossed $291 million, inflation adjusted, per film domestically. Since 2016, Phase 3, the MCU has released 2.75 films per year and has averaged $450 million per film. To date, the MCU has released a total of 12 sequels. On average, these titles outgrossed their predecessor by 31%, with only one grossing less. And the one film that declined was the second Avengers film, which was the sequel to the third highest grossing film of all time and still went on to become the sixth highest grossing film in history. The third Captain America came out 5 years after the first and grossed 2.5% more. Disney, hang on a second, let me change the chart. Disney also leads in sustaining and transitioning love generationally. Consider, for example, how many families have Disneyland photos of their kids with Mickey or Woody on the fridge, or how many of these kids have kept those photos decades later, and now as adults, they recreate the moment with their kids or compare their photo to that of their spouse. As I wrote in Disney IP and Returns to Marginal Affinity, love is incredibly important in storytelling. It is the intangible yet most important differentiator. Businesses based around storytelling franchises excel based on an intangible sort of operating leverage, because it doesn't actually cost more to make someone love your content more, but the value of this love is substantial. Companies like Disney benefit from enormous returns to marginal affinity. We see this in a number of ways. For example, the correlation between a film's cinema score and its box office haul, again, note Disney's cinema score comps from earlier, or ability to leverage a fan's love for the MCU to launch new blockbuster franchises such as Guardians of the Galaxy and Black Panther. The degree to which a fan loves a franchise also informs the success of windowing. Do we go to a movie in a theater or wait until it hits home video? And for home video, do we buy, rent, or wait until it's free on Netflix? ARPU diminishes precipitously the deeper into the window the viewership occurs. The value of affinity is even stronger when applied to media products with scarcity. There's no real cap on movie tickets or TV viewers, but else addresses are finite and theme park attendance is controlled. As a result, marginal affinity can drive substantial pricing power. Those who need to go to Disneyland aren't very price sensitive, nor are parents whose daughter needs an Elsa dress. A little bit more love translates to a great deal of revenue, with no marginal cost and substantially greater profits. And of course, few people consume, let alone create, memes, GIFs, fan edits, fan fiction, and theories for franchises that neither they nor anyone else loves. And these behaviors are powerful marketing and content machines. They even led to a movie being remade. Disney also has the greatest ability to monetize its love, too. Theme parks and cruises, ice shows, Broadway, retail stores, merchandise, TV, and more. No other media company has more opportunities to collect on love. In fact, theme parks are probably the world's first hyper-optimized microtransaction game. Jungle Cruise photo here, Mickey cupcake there, click to buy a fast pass, try on an average Avengers Academy t-shirt inside, etc. Of course, it is possible to love DC or Transformers as much as, if not more than Marvel, even though these franchises have fewer opportunities and mediums to build fan love. However, the owners of these franchises still can't monetize this love to an equivalent degree. It's equally important to note where Disney doesn't really monetize. While the House of Mouse arguably operates the world's greatest consumer products licensing division, it's relatively modest financially. Only 10% of Disney's consolidated profits come from the division. This is because Disney doesn't actually collect most of the profits from its consumer products. Instead, those that design, manufacture, and sell these products do. Disney could increase its role in consumer products manufacturing and distribution, thereby capturing more of the profits. But what really matters is that if a little girl wants to, she can easily wear an Elsa dress or sleep in Frozen pajamas or a Cars bed. This is incredibly potent mind share and love building. It also requires very little storytelling and is brutally hard for a single company to cover. Some people want modernist Star Wars rugs, while others want to express their love for Mickey Mouse through their love for the New England Patriots. As such, Disney hires a third party to manage production and distribution, and compensates them by handing over most of the profit from the sale of associated apparel and merchandise. Disney then monetizes this love in other, more lucrative areas. Go figure. This is something I had no idea of. The $10 licensing revenue from a lightsaber is insignificant in comparison to the value of a little boy spending dozens of hours imagining they're a Jedi Knight. In theory, every story should build love. However, it isn't actually a required process, at least in the short term. And again, Disney is a lesson. The Walt Disney Company's direct-to-video strategy of the 1990s era was enormously successful from a monetization basis. And of course, Aladdin 2, Aladdin 3, Lion King 2, Lion King 1.5, Bambi 2, 100 Dalmatians 2, Patch's London Adventure, The Little Mermaid 2, Return to the Sea, were stories. At the same time, they were arguably love withdrawals and not deposits. We can tell this in the fact that 15 to 25 years later, many hold affections for Aladdin, Lion King, Bambi, and 101 Dalmatians, but few even recall, let alone love, the stories of their sequels. Disney's direct-to-video strategy did more than ignore audience love. It also ended the Disney Renaissance and eventually gutted Disney's animation studios. By the 2000s, the group's theatrical sales and critical reviews had plummeted. A few films bombed outright, like Atlantis. What's more, 15 years of lowered standards had sucked out DAS's creative strategy, that's Disney Animation Studios, led many of its top animators and writers to leave, and resulted in Disney missing the rise of computer animation, even though it had pioneered many of the most important advances in 20th century animation. Upstarts such as Pixar and DreamWorks Animation were routinely breaking Disney's long-running records. 6 months after he became CEO, Bob Iger bought Pixar and handed Disney Animation over to Pixar's leadership. Pixar would fix storytelling, which would lead to love, which returned Disney Animation Studios to monetization. In many ways, the Hollywood enthusiasm for IP-based money pump mobile games represents the same strategy, all about number 3 with almost none of number 1 and a general indifference to number 2. We can also contrast the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which has excelled with 1, 2, and 3, with franchises that tried for all 3 but only managed the bookends. In 2016, for example, DC spoke about the irrelevance of critical reviews and exit polling after Batman v Superman, 27% on Rotten Tomatoes and a B cinema score, and Suicide Squad, a barely known franchise in the DC universe that also earned a 27% Rotten Tomatoes score and a B cinema score, opened to massive 166 million and 134 million grosses. 2 years later, DC's signature film, Justice League, with a 40% score and a B-plus average, cratered with a $93 million opening despite starring the 3 most popular DC characters. Marvel's subsequent Avengers films grossed more in its opening weekend than Justice League did in its lifetime, as did Black Panther, who was largely unknown before his film debut. It's notable that across 23 films, the MCU has only 1 B-level cinema score. The DCEU collected 2 by its 3rd film, even though the average box office haul for these films was higher thanks to the comparative strength of the characters. If you build love, monetization follows. If you underperform, monetization is harmed. Notably, Disney's Star Wars franchise also declined as fans bristled at Disney's creative decisions and mismanagement. Episode 8 grossed less than Episode 7, and Episode 9 tumbled even further, grossing half of 7. The second spin-off, Solo, grossed 37% of the first. No one can escape the cost of harming love. It should be clear at this point that I think the most important thing in entertainment is the ability to build love. Anyone can tell a story. Fewer, but still many, can tell a story well. And when stories are told, they typically generate revenue. However, profits, and especially great profits, come from love. The MCU is so successful not just because its story is better told than peers, but because they better convert to love. This love is easily seen through a ticket sale or to a costume purchase of Captain America. Man, do I love this. And I bet you can see where I'm going with this one. However, it's most valuable when transferred to those who appear alongside Captain America, such as the Falcon or Wanda Maximoff. Similarly, love is the great cure-all. It doesn't matter that Batman and Robin was terrible, or whether the Star Wars sequel trilogy betrayed you in one entry or another. Odds are that you root for a great adaptation of these stories. And thus, while a creative miss might harm a given entry's P&L, these franchises can quickly rebound through execution, as The Mandalorian has proven. This is also why we see non-linear returns to the most loved stories versus just popular ones. Star Wars versus Terminator or Power Rangers. The evolution of Disney's IP strategy under Bob Iger is similarly instructive. The first half of Iger's tenure focuses not just on tentpoles like Toy Story, Cars, and Marvel, but also producing new blockbuster franchises or renewing IP that had been dormant for decades or longer. This included Tron Legacy, Tomorrowland, John Carter, Lone Ranger, Oz, and Oz the Great and Powerful. These titles were infamous box office bombs at their worst and barely profitable at best. This in turn led Disney to refocus on expanding and developing franchises that had already had substantial level of love rather than just awareness. Note too that after decanonizing the Star Wars expanded universe, Disney is now recanonizing much of it. If you believe that the media industry has, until recently, deeply undervalued IP, then the valuations for beloved IP represent utter market failure. It is also here where Disney Plus is so important. Disney didn't need a direct-to-consumer SVOD service to successfully tell stories and build love for them. It has always been disintermediated and thrived all the same. Disney also didn't need a direct-to-consumer SVOD to collect billions in SVOD profits. Under the arms dealer model, it could have just kept making its film and TV shows and collected 6 to 10 billion in SVOD profits per year just from licensing to Amazon, Netflix, Apple, and HBO. No risk, no investment, no payback period. Disney Plus offers important comparative advantages to this easy money. By bringing all of its franchises and titles together into a single platform, Disney can better tell its stories and build love. Imagine how much harder it would be to build out the Star Wars and Marvel Cinematic Universe if their interconnected stories and films were split across multiple streaming services, each with their own release schedule. And even if everything Star Wars was sold to Amazon, Prime Video isn't made for Star Wars nor Disney. In addition, Disney Plus is the one place where Disney knows each of its consumers which specific titles and heroes they like most, and helps the company to understand what else they buy across its ecosystem. Totes, vacations, toys. In time, Disney Plus will come to offer all of these other products, from comics to resort passes too. All of this helps Disney improve love monetization. This can seem like an essay focused on Disney, not storytelling, nor Theodore Levitt. But if you accept that an entertainment company is about love building, that means every entertainment company must be in a process of constant change, from where it tells stories to where you build love and to how it monetizes. There was a time in which oral culture reigned supreme, which was eventually supplanted by the stage play, which dominated the middle of the second millennium. Later on, the most popular stories of the world were text-based, from Lord of the Rings to the Chronicles of Narnia, then in radio, through Gunsmoke and the Lone Ranger, then in films such as Star Wars, Titanic, and The Matrix. Eventually, TV became the best medium for love building and incubation. It's unlikely that Game of Thrones could have found an economical audience through theatrical films. So too The Walking Dead. Collectively, these series were the most popular scripted shows in the United States for close to a decade. Similarly, TV is now being used to rehabilitate hydroplane franchises like Star Wars, or enrich lesser-known characters such as the stars of WandaVision or Miss Marvel. Many of these video-centric franchises originated in other mediums, however. Their popularity influence peaked through film and TV. Music is another fascinating example. The entire industry used to tell stories through the album format, build love primarily through the album and monetize through it too. But over time, the concert experience and art form improved substantially while the barriers to music creation fell precipitously. As a result, live music became the key to any album's story, one of the most important channels for love building, and the most remunerative one too. For many artists, music isn't even the core of their monetization strategy, just the place in which their brand story is told and where love is instilled. Kanye, Rihanna, Jay-Z have all made far more money outside of music than in it, much like celebrity athletes such as Ronaldo or David Beckham. Investor Chris Dixon recently argued that music-related NFTs are so powerful because they allow musical artists to, for the first time in the digital era, sell a new thing rather than just the old thing, a song, in a new way. Then there's the enormity of Travis Scott's Fortnite concert. Nearly 30 million people spent 9 minutes fully immersed in his music. This included diehard and casual fans, non-fans, and people who didn't even know he existed. There is no other experience on earth, including the Super Bowl halftime show, that can deliver this degree of reach and attention, COVID-19 or not. The track Scott premiered during the concert, The Scotts, a collaboration with Kid Cudi, debuted at #1 on Billboard a week later. This was Cudi's first Billboard #1 and the biggest debut of 2020. In addition, several of the tracks Scott performed from his 2-year-old Astroworld album returned to the Billboard charts, and many millions of dollars of virtual Scott goods were sold. The constant changes in 1, 2, and 3 speak to how the entertainment industry is changing beyond D2C SVOD. The closest trends are video gaming, interactivity, and multimedia, transmedia, cross-media storytelling. Taken together, this will fundamentally alter competitive dynamics, which stories we love, and how much. Over the past 20 years, many new franchises have been born or elevated, from Twilight to Game of Thrones, and many of the biggest franchises, such as Star Wars and Marvel, have grown stronger. But in aggregate, the medium that has generated the most new love is video games, which is what I was saying on this channel a couple of days ago about things like Ghosts of Tsushima or The Last of Us. This explains why, after spending 2 decades trying to create whole cloth new IP or to modernize old European IP via film TV, Hollywood is now rushing to adapt titles like Halo, Super Mario, Diablo, Sonic, The Legend of Zelda, The Last of Us, BioShock, Metal Gear Solid, Fallout, Pokemon, and more. These titles have now collected multiple generations of fans, love building, and benefited from several reboots and technical advancements that have substantially grown its storytelling sophistication. We can tell how powerful gaming's love building advantages, i.e. immersion, agency, interactivity, are because most would argue that the storytelling remains much weaker on average. Consider the fact that we laugh more in a movie theater than we're watching a movie at home, and more at home with a partner beside us than alone. Gaming is increasingly a medium that's optimized around the very elements that explain this dynamic, the potency of social, collective storytelling experiences. And crucially, game publishers aren't licensing their IP for adaptation to film and TV to monetize, but to instead grow love for their content through new types of stories. I can say that's true because I worked on Dota, which is, of course, Valve's game, Dota 2. Microsoft, which has 1.9 trillion market cap, doesn't need a few million from a 30 billion Viacom CBS for the rights to a Halo TV series due on Paramount Plus this year, nor is this fee going to exceed annual profits from the Halo game. There is no better evidence that power dynamics have changed from linear video to video gaming. Game publishers are effectively paying Hollywood, via the majority of profits from adaptation, for building love and fans for their franchises. These are the stories of tomorrow. Just as gaming seeks Hollywood to adapt their stories in order to build love, Hollywood seeks out gaming to adapt theirs. But in this latter case, Hollywood faces existential threats. 5 years ago, EA had only one Star Wars title. Now it has a multiplayer action title, Star Wars Battlefront 2, a single-player adventure franchise, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and a multiplayer space combat title, Squadrons, a free-to-play mobile collectibles RPG game, Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, one MMO, Star Wars The Old Republic, and is reportedly working on a sequel to its best-selling MMO series, The Knights of the Old Republic, as well as remakes of the first two titles. More broadly, several of the best stories told in the Star Wars universe since 1983's The Return of the Jedi have been told in games, not film. Not all were made by EA, though several were. In 2020, fans spent more time with the Avengers in Fortnite than Avengers Endgame. These experiences offer far more immersion, far more easily, and to far more people than Disney parks, consumer products, or SVOD can. It also made many characters, such as Doctor Doom and She-Hulk, familiar to and popular with audiences for the first time in decades. In many respects, this is good for Disney. More stories, more love, more monetization. At the same time, EA has been responsible for an ever-growing share of Star Wars stories. Number 1, love building. Number 2, and profits. Number 3. EA owns the customer relationship and data, too. And it is, of course, building its own direct-to-consumer media platform and storytelling ecosystem. Lucasfilm's Games' recent decision to diversify its Star Wars licenses to other publishers, such as Ubisoft, moderates the extent to which Disney's Star Wars franchise will build up any one gaming ecosystem. But it does not build up Disney's ability to meet consumers in the category telling the most inventive stories, generating the most new love, and that is rapidly becoming the best monetizing entertainment category globally. And unlike in streaming video, there's no quick way to catch up. Disney can't just buy a back-end game service provider, reclaim the back catalog of Disney-based games, and become a leader. Producing games and live operating them is a fundamentally different skill set than figuring out how to stream linear content over the internet. And Disney does not own or ever get back the library of Star Wars or Marvel games that have been made over the years, nor is there demand to replay them similar to that of the Disney Vault of Films. In contrast to licensing Captain America for Mattel for a plastic shield, or to Mattel, video gaming is more narrative, more important, and differentiated. This is not an area where a media company can just pick to enhance love. It must own it, the story, and the fullest dollar. You also can't learn how to tell a great gaming story or make a great video game through licensing and without any real access to player data. Furthermore, publishers typically do not assign their top creatives or concepts to licensed titles, which makes sense. Publishers maximize their returns by focusing on properties they own, royalty-free, and in perpetuity. This model can also suffer from the principal agent problem. Licensees, after all, are less focused on the long-term strength of the underlying IP than instead maximizing the value they collect while it's theirs to use. This led Disney to publicly condemn EA's monetization model for Star Wars Battlefront 2 and force change. And even when the principal agent problem isn't at work, licensees aren't in the business of supporting their licensors' other objectives. Example, selling movie tickets or merchandise. When Netflix's The Witcher TV series started streaming, The Witcher 3 video game saw its player count grow 3 to 4 times. And the 30-year-old book series returned to the New York Times bestseller list for the second time ever and received a 500,000 copy reprint for the U.S. alone. George R. R. Martin's A Song of Fire and Ice series had sold roughly 15 million copies over its first 15 years. In the decade following the premiere of Game of Thrones, some 90 million more copies were shipped. These are not examples of transmedia storytelling. They do, however, speak to the growing desire to keep experiencing a story world, even to the point of duplication. And with Star Wars, Marvel, and DC uniting their film, TV, and comics universes, while Fortnite expands into comics, it's clear the next phase of storytelling will extend into gaming. The rise of virtual production and real-time rendering via game engines will supercharge this trend. Suddenly, a physical studio backlot and digital backlot will merge to become truly virtual, with asset shares across all mediums. I can't stress enough how important that is. There aren't many companies that can pull this off. It requires unique IP, diverse capabilities, plus unprecedented coordination across every business unit and creative. No one has this in place today, and the hands are fairly distinct. The major tech companies, such as Amazon, Google, and Apple, are bad at IP. Hi there. I'm still going. It's almost done. I'm sorry. Games or video, if not all three. Actually, let me start that again. The major tech companies, such as Amazon, Google, and Apple, are bad at IP. Games or video, if not all three. Disney excels at IP universes and is building up expertise in filmed TV transmedia, but it has no interactive assets. At the same time, this could change quickly via acquisition, and the applicability of theme park expertise should not be overlooked. Warner Brothers is unique in that it excels in gaming, film, and TV, and has its own direct-to-consumer platform. However, it is comparatively earlier in cinematic universe building and social world-based gaming. Done right, this transmedia universe could be the path to surpassing Marvel, just as Marvel's cinematic universe model was used to surpass the rest of the industry. Sony is another leading candidate. Over the past 20 years, no one has created more globally resonant and largely narrative IP. From God of War to The Last of Us, Horizon Zero Dawn, Uncharted, Death Stranding, the PlayStation Spider-Man series. More impressive still, Sony has done this under a largely decentralized studio model. These titles and other gaming-native IPs such as Metal Gear Solid are now being adapted into film and TV by Sony Productions. Sony also boasts its own virtual production arm, while Sony Immersive Studios recently partnered with Sony Music to produce a live, virtually produced VR concert with Madison Beer. And then there's Sony's market-leading PlayStation console platform and close partnership with Epic Games. But corporate integration has always been Sony's biggest obstacle, hence missing the MP3 smartphone, CTV, and SVOD market opportunities despite the aforementioned assets. In addition, Sony is weakest in online multiplayer, UGC, and live-operated worlds. Riot Games already operates one of the world's largest video game franchises, League of Legends, and has long envisioned itself as a modern Disney. Over the past 2 years alone, the company has launched 3 League of Legends spin-offs, an auto battler, a mobile MOBA, and digital collectible card games, with several more to come. This year, we'll also see the release of Arcane, a League of Legends anime series that was mostly developed in-house at Riot and will be the most expensive animated series in history, by multiples per reporters. Riot also operates a virtual K-pop girl group composed of League of Legends heroes that has already topped Billboard global streaming charts on 2 occasions, and the squad's first music video hit 100 million views on YouTube in a single month and is approaching 450 million today. Last fall, the company hired its first ever chief marketing officer. Nintendo is another fascinating example, as I wrote in detail last year. The company spent the late 1980s and early 1990s looking to extend its IP through third parties. However, this led to a string of creative, commercial, and reputations disappointments, including the lackluster The Super Mario Bros. Super Show, infamous Super Mario Bros. Movie, and even worse series of Legends of Zelda games made by Philips for its CDI console. This led the already conservative Nintendo to drastically reduce all licensing activities for close decades. Nintendo owns less than a third of and does not creatively manage the Pokemon Company, which does have a large-scale consumer products and animation business. But by the mid-2010s, Nintendo began to rapidly open back up. The company struck deals with NBC Universal to develop several themed lands for its parks, then for its Illumination Entertainment division, which Minions and Secret Life of Pets, to produce the first Nintendo movie in more than 30 years, Super Mario. The first in a series of digitally enabled Lego kits also shipped last year, as did an AR mobile game made in partnership with mid-range startups Valen Studios. Nintendo's evolution speaks to the nearly universal mindset shift in the gaming industry. The potential licensing fee from a TV adaptation or profit sharing from a theatrical adaptation is tiny compared to the potential of a wholly owned hit game. In addition, a failed adaptation can do enormous harm to love, i.e. players can end up disappointed, if not embarrassed. But today, there is no fan top of funnel as wide as a hit film or a TV series. Still, Nintendo's licensing requirements and strategy is worth emphasis. Specifically, the company mandates that there are to be no story deviations, characters, or attributes that might, quote, limit future game development. This is an incredibly broad constraint that doubtlessly limits the stories that can be told and the profits collected. But for Nintendo, everything that isn't a game is intended to build love among current players to generate new ones. Furthermore, Nintendo is uniquely disinterested in profit maximization. Instead, it is obsessed with telling only the best possible stories. Why does this matter? Entertainment companies today don't make movies or TV shows. They don't even mainly tell stories. They manage the properties of those stories in such a way to create and sustain deep affinity, build love. This is a very different rubric than the media industry is used to. It also suggests that many low-margin businesses, products, or titles create more value than an income statement might realize. Fucking men. Think about the correlation between the pajamas you wore growing up and the adaptations films you deeply want to succeed versus those you're largely indifferent to. It's doubtlessly true that the comics divisions of Warner Brothers, DC, and Disney's Marvel deliver minimal revenues and dilutive margins. But comics remain a low-cost channel for story and love building. Notably, almost all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe's forthcoming series are from the last and largely unknown decade of comics. It doesn't matter to Maestro Kevin Feige that his films have eclipsed not just the comics by several literal orders of magnitude, nor even all of film history. These comics are where new stories are created, discovered, and refined. The now globally famous character of Miles Morales first appeared in 2011. Miss Marvel, who has her own MCU TV series this year, comes from 2013. Riri Williams, who will take up Iron Man's mantle in her own MCU TV series, first appeared less than 5 years ago. This trend also means that Hollywood needs to solve its video game problem. The category simply matters too much to audiences. It is also becoming more social, immersive, and narratively rich each day. Consider the evolution of TV video versus games over the past 15 years. The MCU films and series of 2021 are more interconnected, complex, and visually impressive than 2008's Iron Man, but they're still rather similar. Games, meanwhile, have been entirely reinvented for live service, social multiplayer, and UGC. Now we're only a few years from the point in which millions will come home to join a live event with a real-time motion capture hero like Tony Stark, who will likely not be performed by Robert Downey Jr., even though it will look like him, alongside their friends. Not long after, these will be integrated into the weekly release schedule TV series, thereby enabling the audience to help the heroes as they watch them. This also connects to Disney's greatest love advantage, its theme parks. For all the success of Disney Plus, the strongest, most profitable, most defensible part of Disney's business is its capex-heavy physical theme parks. As I wrote in Digital Theme Park Platforms, the most important media business of the future, there is no simple way to quantify how important this business unit is to Disney. The financial role is obvious, but there is nothing that can compare to the impact of a child being hugged by her heroes. The ability to enjoy your favorite IP as you is unique and lasts a lifetime. hence the rise of cosplay, I'd say. The problem with Disney parks, however, is that they can only ever reach a tiny portion of Disney's fans, and rarely its lower income and foreign fans, and it takes tens of billions of dollars and close to a decade to reach more, which is why most of Disney's competitors lack parks despite the importance and profitability. Digital theme parks, however, are always open everywhere, full of your friends, and impervious to COVID. They also boast an even larger, i.e. infinite number of attractions and rides, none of which need to be bound by the laws of physics or the need for physical safety, and all of which can be rapidly updated and personalized. These digital parks also allow for much greater self-expression, example, avatars or skins, and soon every fan will be able to receive a hug from the actual Iron Man. This isn't to say an IP holder needs to own a gaming studio per se. Obviously, that's an advantage in a number of ways, but at minimum, every IP owner needs cohesive and comprehensive strategy for interactivity that goes beyond MG, GGs, and Avatar licensing. What does all of this mean for the entertainment industry overall? Well, one of the key lessons over the past several decades in entertainment is one of more. We want more of the stories we love, more often, in more places, and more media, always. We might gripe about how Disney will never let Star Wars end, or that the endless sequels undermine the significance of any films that came before. But the truth is, only we want something to end until immediately after it does. Give us The Mandalorian. Even as we tire of the sequel trilogy and then the second season of The Mandalorian 1 year later. We hated the prequels, but delight at the idea of a spin-off of Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan. 2 Star Wars games aren't enough, nor is 4. Just look at gaming over the past year and a half. Yes, the pandemic led us to play more games, but mostly we played our favorite games more. If our biggest stories become bigger, and ultimately we want endless amounts of more from our favorite stories, then most of us will hit a sort of Dunbar's number for franchises. The bigger Marvel or anyone gets narratively in love building and in monetization, the harder it will be for a Power Rangers reboot or a Dark Universe or a Transformers ecosystem to grow. Consider the mocap example. We're not going to run home to mocap every hero we know of, even if we watch a diverse selection of hero movies. This means fewer stories will collect ever more of the benefit. There used to be a fight to be one of the winning comic books, video games, or film franchises. This meant that there was room for many winners and that the reach of any winner was limited. Soon, it will be a fight for dominance between all franchises and across all mediums. The major stories will expand into all categories, from film to TV to podcasts, and be envisioned as interactive experiences. And as long as they continue to offer more, there's little reason for a fan to look and invest elsewhere. This doesn't mean smaller stories won't exist, be consumed, or be popular, but they're likely to be snacks and sides, just like non-franchise films are at the box office today. It's also likely that we'll continue to see new franchises emerge and old ones fade. However, the IP business is fueled by love and monetization feedback loops. Those who do it best and most will win, and the threshold is going up. Now, I know that was a long one. There's probably like 6 of you left watching this stream. But I thought that this was probably the best explanation of the entertainment business and where we're at in terms of IP than anything I've ever read. So kudos to MatthewBall.vc. I'm going to put this article in the live chat because there's so many links in here and so many other things that you could learn from. I would suggest reading this article again if you're interested in the subject matter and really delve into it. But I'm sure all of you can tell what I was thinking when I'm reading this article. Can you guess? All I could think about was Star Trek. All I could think about was how the Star Trek franchise is doing none of what is being done or what this article suggests. And also where the comics industry is right now. Your agendas, all of the ridiculous, all of the subjugation of stories in favor of today's in vogue political or identity politics agendas, if you go down that route, and we are watching the comic books industry go down that route, we're watching Star Trek go down that route, according to this gentleman, according to Mr. Ball, you will fail utterly. And I love the idea that these properties, according to this article, and I agree 100%, the entertainment business does only three things: create and tell stories, build love for those stories, and monetize that love. The first thing you have to do is create and tell stories and build love for those stories. If you aren't doing that, you're failing. And how many franchises now are at war with their own fans? The people that they're supposed to build love for. And it's amazing to me because all of these franchises, whether it's Star Wars, whether it's Star Trek, whether it's Doctor Who, whether it's Game of Thrones, whatever you want to call it, it's amazing to me that the very biggest of these franchises and IPs are at war with their consumer base. And this is because of the way these franchises are being managed by these entertainment companies, where they forget that first and foremost, the people that should be working as creators on these properties should be passionate and want to tell the best stories they can. You don't want a guy like J.J. Abrams, when he's promoting his way overpriced Star Trek movies that underperformed, to tell the press, I never liked Star Trek. Why the fuck would you hire somebody like that? Why would you hire a guy like Alex Kurtzman to supplant somebody like Brian Fuller? Like this article says, you find the creators that love your franchise and you invest the kind of money you should, because what you're doing is you're building brand loyalty. And I never understood, until I read this article, I never understood why that we talk about Jazz Inc. and Yost over at Jazz Inc. Why was Yost able to not worry about, say, making Millennium Falcon cockpits and things? Well, to find out in this article, this is the very first time I understood the idea. It never even occurred to me that Disney allows other companies that manufacture their products, the apparels or whatever, blankets, tote bags, backpacks, they allow those companies to profit themselves, because what Disney is doing is investing in the love. What an interesting strategy, one that I did not understand. So, of course, if some really small company in the Netherlands is building places to put your Hot Toys figures, like a beautiful Millennium Falcon cockpit, of course they're not worried about it, because what is it for? It's for Hot Toys. So you got to buy more Hot Toys, which are a licensed product, and it just celebrate the love. Disney is yub-nubbing it all the way into the future, and it's too bad that not more people understand this, as other franchises fail for one reason only. They're not telling good stories, and in not telling good stories, they are not celebrating the love. I love the idea that this guy, Matthew Ball, who I was unaware of until my friend in the entertainment industry, who, by the way, this was the only article this person ever sent me. And it came with a note that said, I think you'll be really interested in this article. This article might be one of the more insightful articles I have ever read about how the modern entertainment industry works. So if he's watching this, thank you, sir. You made my day. Of course, it was a long article. I could have just given it to you to read, but I figured I'd read it anyway because it helps me when I read things out loud to generate comprehension in what I'm reading. But this article, man, and Matthew Ball, you have a follower in me, sir. Again, Ball Matthew, at Ball Matthew, and that's BALLMATTHEW. Follow him on Twitter, because this guy knows what is up. Let's see what you guys have to say. And to follow this up, Jason Webster writes in. I got to have some water after that one. Hi, Robert. I hope yourself and the wonderful members of the Post-Geek Singularity have been sailing through the week with vivaciousness. As I said in my previous letter, That is not to say there hasn't been good films to come out of Hollywood. There have been plenty. Those that I had on my list of my favorite films for each year between 2010 and 2020 are examples: The Social Network, The King's Speech, Green Zone, Warrior, Zero Dark 30, Argo, Rush, The Big Short, and Joker. They spring to mind. Also Black Klansman, Uncut Gems, Hustlers, Marriage Story, and The Irishman could be seen as other examples. Films that could be called diamonds in the rough. Pardon the pun. I say this because, unfortunately, they have been canceled or drowned out by the sheer plethora of mediocre to bad films to come out of the American film industry over the last decade, especially with regard to blockbuster epics. The sheer volume of them they have seen develop a sameness, emphasis of spectacle over substance due to an over-reliance of special effects at the expense of good storytelling, world building, and character development. Oh, you mean films that didn't generate love? This is my new favorite thing. You got to generate the love, man. Narrative complexity and depth of characters are certainly not something you associate with many recent blockbusters. Audiences have developed an indifference to such supposed blockbusters, jaded by films such as Ghostbusters, Independence Day Resurgence, Ben-Hur, Disney's Star Wars sequel, Pacific Rim Uprising, The Cloverfield Paradox, Dark Phoenix, Hellboy, and Men in Black International. However, they are certainly not alone in being underwhelming films. Here is a small list of examples of the types of forgettable movies that unfortunately made it to cinemas worldwide. Movie 43, After Earth, A Good Day to Die Hard, Grace of Monaco, A Magic in the Moonlight, Tammy, Vacation, Fantastic Four, War with Everyone, Cell, Zoolander 2, Max Steel, The Emoji Movie, 50 Shades Darker, Winchester, the 1517 to Paris, Robin Hood, A Wrinkle in Time, 50 Shades Free, Life of the Party, I Feel Pretty, The Predator, The Hustle, The Kitchen, 47 Meters Down, Uncaged, Charlie's Angels, Black Christmas, The Haunting of Sharon Tate, Cats, The Grudge, Doolittle, Artemis Fowl, Fantasy Island, and The War with Grandpa. Some of these films were not so much as feasts for the senses as they were brutal assaults on the senses. I have friends that have labeled many of these films crimes against Western culture. However, I would not go that far. I have heard the most recent installment of the Terminator franchise be called Terminator Dark Fart. That is even before one adds this year's unflattering, unfunny cinematic equivalent of a lump of coal entitled Thunder Force. The movie-going public has been left saying, "We've seen it all before and we've seen it done better." That does not mean there haven't been any good blockbusters released over the last decade. Many MCU films, The Meg, Venom, and Aquaman are obvious examples. One of the biggest factors behind the majority of bad or underperforming movies is that they are movies made by committee and churned out as if they have been mass-produced on an assembly line. Pushed into existence by studio executives because they seem risk-averse and marketing analysis the films would guarantee huge returns on investment. However, they do not turn out that way. It is unfortunate when we see films tainted by studio interference because the creatives have worked so hard on the film with the goal of producing the best film they can. Very few directors are afforded creative license to produce the films they want to make. Spielberg, Lucas, James Cameron, Peter Jackson, Guillermo del Toro are the best examples of directors given this freedom. The problem with studio interference has come about through the fact that those corporations that come to own film studios and those that become studio executives have come from other industries that are not on the same level in terms of creativity as film production. So business practices are different and lend themselves to be governed by risk-averse tactics and analytics and so on. Not having substantial representation from those who have a knowledge of film production experience have proved problematic. They've put more faith in their marketing departments than their creatives, which is wrong. The reason why studios were so strong for many decades because those in upper management had lengthy experience in the industry and were dedicated to film. For many decades, they were largely family-owned companies or corporate entities that specialized in film and television production. They were not subsidiaries of large corporations who established their reputation in other industry or industries. Why do conglomerates want a slice of the action in Hollywood? Why do they acquire film studios? Well, the answer is obvious: money, and lots of it, because as a consumable product, the film's reach is global. We all watch Hollywood make films from America to United Kingdom and everywhere else in between. Ask every man, woman, and child for their favorite films, and those produced in Hollywood would comprise the majority of their list. Then throw in ancillary markets, especially for blockbusters, and the scale goes off the chart. Merchandising, television, and streaming rights can net studios billions of a solitary intellectual property. The first 6 Star Wars films raked in over $6.8 billion globally for 20th Century Fox. Even in a stagnant year when no Star Wars films were released, such as 2012, the franchise still raked in $3 billion through merchandise and other ancillary markets. For Warner Brothers, the Harry Potter franchise netted $8.64 billion globally. The Jurassic Park franchise has earned a little over $5 billion worldwide for Universal. The Star Trek film franchise has netted Paramount approximately $2.7 billion from 13 films. The Fast and the Furious franchise has earned over $5.9 billion globally. See the attraction for corporations to want to have a foot in Hollywood. If you need further proof, there's a terrific documentary released on PBS in 2000, called The Monster That Hollywood. That's an odd title. I hope you got that right. Noted producer Peter Guber, an American Werewolf in London and Batman, made this exact same point. He said, "What is the attraction of multinational consumer electronics companies, 2 of them, Panasonic and Sony, to buying companies in Hollywood? What is the attraction of a Canadian spirits company, Seagram's, to buying a company in Hollywood? I think it's like the moth drawn to a flame. It's the attraction of the storyteller. There's something that you can't quite get anywhere else. To own a piece of that territory, to own a piece of that real estate, is to somehow say, that's mine, and then you see it on every screen in the world, is a very compelling element. Now, when it's also economically sound, and it can be, it's a very powerful magnet for these companies. Films that I made 25 years ago in the 1970s, Midnight Express, I'm still getting checks from exposure. The 25th year re-release to a video to a new DVD. So these are very valuable intellectual properties. Not easy to create, but still something that has a compelling nature for both the entrepreneurial spirit and the creative spirit of companies and people." In an interview with Film Courage, writer, comedian, and founder of the magazine Film Threat, Chris Gore, by the way, I watched this yesterday, so this is topical, has the opinion that Lucasfilm Disney not having Luke, Han, and Leia in a scene is studio malpractice. I have said that very thing on the show many, many times. He called The Rise of Skywalker hot garbage, and he believes studios have no excuses to fail with big-budget blockbusters. And he's absolutely correct. Every studio blockbuster, based on the experience of the studio entity, should be a success. The fact that they make bad movies... He believes the reason mainstream films are so bad or mediocre is because they are not passion projects. They're turned out for licensing deals and access to ancillary markets. Absolutely 100% right. As this article I read said, movies should be seen as a way to build love. And if you're not building love, why are you making them? And where does love come from? Passion. Unless filmmakers are passionate about what they're making. If a studio has, for instance, a Star Wars franchise to make, I would see people who are passionate about the project. Don't look on a spreadsheet and think, oh, this guy's, he worked on Mission Impossible, Star Trek, we'll hire him. Yeah, let's give C-3PO a red arm and the Millennium Falcon a rectangular dish so I can get the merchandising from that. No. Find people who are passionate about things first. But they don't do that in Hollywood. That's not how it works. Let's see. He called Rise of Skywalker hot. Chris Gore called Rise of Skywalker hot garbage and believes studios have no excuses to fail with big budget blockbusters. He believes the reason mainstream films are so bad or mediocre is because they're not passion projects, because they're churned out for licensing deals. Another factor has been the failure to hire screenplay authors suitable for the project they were hired for. Films from Lucasfilm and Bad Robot are the best examples of projects doomed to failure due to this fact. Such a bad practice has all but driven the following genre fare to the edge of oblivion: Star Wars, Star Trek, and Terminator. I am sure members of the Post-Geek Singularity can add other franchises that have and will suffer the same fate. Again, I come back to Chris Gore, who believes falling back on tropes and shoehorning characters instead of them having been organically in the story from the beginning are significant problems. As I've always believed, everything that is contained in the story is intrinsic to the world of the story to achieve verisimilitude. Otherwise, elements of the story will be jarring and you risk losing engagement with the audience. The mediocre and bad films I have mentioned are classic examples of this. I remember reading an article in the late 1990s covering this public speaking tour in Australia by famous Academy Award-winning American screenwriter, and it may have been William Goldman. I'll have to check on that. He predicted the quality of filmmaking in Hollywood will suffer through a dearth of great screenwriters in the 21st century. The volume of emerging talent in the field would not be there as it was in previous decades. To be an effective screenplay author, I believe one not only has read and studied classic literature, as well as screenwriting, but has also served as an assistant on a writing team under a great screenwriter. To become a great screenwriter, be a voracious reader and read everything you can get your hands on, comics, graphic novels, and novels. Read the scripts considered the best of each genre. Now, I'm not saying anyone who likes those films I have labeled mediocre or forgettable should stop liking them, or that they're wrong for liking them. If you like them, I'm happy you found something to enjoy in those films. However, Hollywood studios are more than capable of producing better films that offer a little more in terms of sophisticated storytelling and verisimilitude as well as entertainment. I am optimistic, and I believe everything operates in cycles, and we will return to the scenario where there will be consistency and high-quality filmmaking once again. I highly recommend everyone viewing The Monster That Ate Hollywood. Okay, you missed the words. Okay, it is The Monster That Ate Hollywood, if they haven't seen it. Hopefully, they will be able to find it somewhere online. It's a great documentary. Well, that's all for me from this letter. I hope yourself and the Post-Geek Singularity enjoy the remainder of the week. Jason Webster. Absolutely. Jason, a great letter. A great letter. And by the way, I cannot believe that I'm getting all of these letters, that there is a synergy going on here with the viewers of this channel. Maybe I'd like to think it's a synergy I'm creating by what I'm sharing. I'm inspiring all you to write these fantastic letters. Mario Lopez, all the way from Portugal, is here. Hi, Robert. Today I send a letter because I think Today I send a letter because I think I lost my hope of seeing the work of Zack Snyder completed for the DC Extended Universe. And I have someone to blame. Warner Brothers. They not only did not protect, but even attacked this director that I admire so much. But I take my hat off to Warner in the way they did that. First, they didn't want to support the Snyder Cut. Then they said it didn't exist. Then they did everything to attack Zack Snyder's fans as if they were toxic, taking small examples and isolated facts and then blame the whole community. Zack Snyder fans are non-toxic. It is all the internet that is and has always been it is all the internet that is and has always been toxic in all aspects and shapes. But Warner Brothers' plan did not stop there. They created a trap from which Zack Snyder came out frowned upon at a charity event, which aimed to combat suicide. Zack Snyder was so clumsy in this situation that an entire community turned against him. I also think that this same community should have had the coolness to forgive and understand Zack Snyder and to accuse the real culprits who masterfully orchestrated this incident, manipulating like puppets the director and fans and the organizers of the event, Geeks and Gamers. Warner's plan did not end there. When they saw the movie Justice League aired on HBO ended with a cliffhanger, they soon began to sabotage the possible sequel. First with the dismissal of Amber Heard, and then with the opinion pieces that once again gave the wrong signals. The final blow was the fact that they announced on Henry Cavill's birthday that they wanted to replace him with the Black Superman. I have to admit, this plan is perfect. In a blow, they end the Snyderverse once and for all, and they're guaranteed that they will never be accused of bad management, because if the next Superman film fails, it will not be due to their own incompetence, but because fans are racists. I have to acknowledge it's a perfect plan for those who do not have as the number one goal the success of an increasingly less competitive franchise when compared to Marvel. Marvel's secret was to plan long term, to believe that its plan was going to be a success, and to support all the actors and directors who participated in the long saga. What Marvel set out to do was not better them than the MCU, better them than the DCEU, but it was the whole vision oriented in a single direction, making films and characters from these films create synergies of success. Look what happened to Captain Marvel, in my opinion, the weakest of all the films, but that made so much money because it was fit between Infinity War and Endgame. If Warner had followed her principles and supported Zack Snyder's vision, they would achieve the desired goals, success, and profit in a darker, more serious, and less humorous environment, as the DCEU aficionados would want. I saw the first Wonder Woman movie, then I saw Man of Steel, then Batman vs. Superman, the long version, and finally Zack Snyder's Justice League. How spectacular it was to see these 4 films in a row. I am sorry that Wonder Woman 1984 did not expand this universe. On the contrary, it was clear that this movie was not part of the same timeline. Suicide Squad was another film that appears to have been destroyed by Warner. The best thing about the film was the flashbacks of Joker and Harley Quinn. It was so obvious that there should have been a film to tell in detail the destructive relationship these two characters lived. Finally, Warner had success with the film Joker, but they made another strategic mistake by removing this film from the same universe and by not betting on Jared Leto. Joaquin Phoenix is amazing, but Jared Leto could have done the job. Marvel bet all of its chips on its universe, history, characters, and actors. Go figure. Even Logan was a part of the X-Men universe. Robert Downey Jr. was Tony Stark for 11 years. DC has already moved to the third Bruce Wayne in 17 years. It's true I'm a fan, but better than that, I'm just a dissatisfied customer who leaves a promise here. Since they don't give me what I wish, I won't support them with my money, both on Robert Pattinson's Batman film and the next Superman film, whoever he is with. Ben Affleck is my Batman, and Henry Cavill is my Superman. And I wish, and with this, I finish this long letter. Thank you. Kind regards, Mario. You know what's interesting? If I could just bring it back home. And by the way, I didn't even plan the order of these letters. Both of these letters are expressing no love, discontent. Jason Webster's letter and our last letter, Mr. Lopez's letter. What's missing is the love, man. The love. What's missing from me? My love of modern Star Trek, my hatred as a lifelong Star Trek fan, my abject hatred overall of the Star Trek franchise's goal since 2009, which I feel they have never, ever, ever achieved. You can say what you want. They keep cranking them out. They keep spending the money because what they're trying to do is build brand recognition. They're hoping maybe they'll get a little love. I mean, Lower Decks got some love, I guess. Didn't get my love, but it got other people's loves. The Easy Lay fans, I understand why. You like the humor. I know. You know, but doing a parody of something is inherently easier than creating more of that thing that you're making a parody of. So it's hard. I think the people that have worked on Star Trek have been uniquely unqualified to actually make Star Trek because they have not brought the love to the franchise. There's no love there. I mean, otherwise, why would anybody make Into Darkness? I know there's people like Bob Orsi who had love for Star Trek, but J.J. Abrams clearly doesn't. There's no respect or shred of love in any of the works he's done. I don't see any love for Star Trek in Alex Kurtzman's work. I see love for their new characters they've created, the messianic Michael Burnham who could do no wrong. They love her, but they don't love Star Trek. Because if they did love Star Trek, you'd feel it. I can't feel the love tonight because there isn't any in those franchises. There's only a love of money. And you'll never get successful with just a love of money. Dean Mikitich writes in. Dean says, hi, Rob, in the Post-Geek Singularity. Rob, you've mentioned many times that the big studios use spreadsheets to work out what films to make, who to star, and what it's about, etc. Basically, they've lost the ability to take a leap of faith and make a gamble on a project and hope it will be a success. On your first episode of the Robservations Midnighter, you mentioned that there is a film you have wanted to make since 1983, actually 87, based on a novel. You also stated that you were working on a script along with the blessing of the novels of the author of the novel. I want to thank you for showing us a bit of the concept art from that project, and it was damn cool. I hope you can get Kurt Russell for it. I don't want to put a downer on it, but given Hollywood's reliance with these spreadsheets, how likely is it for a big studio to pick up the project and run with it? 1,000, 1,000,000 to 1. I'm an outsider looking in to the Hollywood system, and I can't really comment. But let's say Hollywood does turn it down due to these spreadsheets, but you found an investor that is not connected to Hollywood in any way, but has seen what you want to do and loves it so much, they've given you all the budget you need to make it. Rob, you've now made your film with everything you wanted from the crew to the cast. It's now in the can. How hard would it be to get a studio that originally turned it down to distribute the finished product in the theater? I ask, is there no cost to them except maybe marketing and other costs with distribution? Even if they still don't pick it up, how hard is it to get the film distributed on your own? I ask these questions as I'm curious to know if it's possible to make a film without Hollywood and get it distributed. Oh, absolutely it is. It could be something we see people doing in the future. Finally, Rob, I hope you do the best with this project and that you get it made with you in the director's chair with very little studio interference. But can I ask, once it is made, can you please release an art of book, as I love that shit? Oh, for sure. There's going to be a lot of art that would be generated for this project. Also, when it hits physical media, you know with your background, we're going to want at least 6 hours of special features. Oh, I know, and you'll get them. Maybe hire Charlie Lazarica or any of your colleagues from your days in special features to make them, given you'll be busy with the actual film. Peace and long life, Dean M. Well, Dean is asking... So yes, I am currently working. There's a book I read in 1987. I'll tell you the whole history of this project because it's kind of interesting. So there's a book I read in 1987. I loved it. It was a very odd book that had a very low print run, but it was a hardcover, and I bought it because of the title. I picked up the book. The title's the books looked a little weird. I read it. It's basically a horror fantasy. That deals with a lot of themes that I really like, but it's really out there. It's pretty outlandish, but it was fun. And when I first moved to California, I contacted a producer named Harvey Bernard, who was a vague friend of my grandparents, and I had met him at a screening of a movie he produced, Lady Hawk. He produced The Goonies, he produced The Lost Boys, and he produced all the Omen movies. He was the only person I had any connection to in the motion picture industry. He helped me get my job at Warner Brothers, which was nice because I kept in touch with him, and he's like, you know a lot about movies, kid, but other than that. So when I moved to LA and was going to USC, I contacted him and I said, there's this book that you should look into. Because at the time, I never thought that I would ever be in a position where I could actually, I dreamed of it, but he actually met with the author of the book. And then the author of the book and I became friends because he had written another book that I actually optioned and wrote a script to that had nothing to do with the first book, but it was a story about abortion. And I liked it because it was like a Michael Crichton thriller / courtroom drama. And I really wanted to make it, and I thought I could make this movie. And because I was adopted, I had a unique connection to the story, so I really liked that too. So we became sort of lifelong friends, and the author and I. And when I had money, when I was working on Chronicles of Narnia, I actually paid him to write a draft of the script for this book. This was back in the aughts. So I've had it, and I've been noodling with the script ever since. But I felt that the subject matter was still a little difficult for people to grasp. But now there's been so much material that has come out that is kind of similar in a way to what I want to do that I was like, okay, well, maybe it can happen. So now I've been rewriting the script, making it exactly the way I want to do it. And make no mistake, I want to direct this movie. It's a dream project. I want to make it for 33 years. I even know who I want to play the principal cast. And I'm getting not the whole movie, but I'm getting the first... because everybody wants to see a lookbook. So I'm making, I can't make moving animatics, but I'm creating what's called a story reel, which is what they use in animation. And I'm sort of directing it in my head, and I'm storyboarding out the entire film. But the way I'm doing it is I'm sort of creating rip-o-matics of scenes. I'm like, okay, here are the scenes, but I need you to draw them this way. So he can look at the scenes and go, okay, and it's every single shot. So I'm pre-directing it, and I'm... doing all of then he does artwork for me, and the artwork is all cut together. So when you sit down and you're gonna be able to watch like the first 15 minutes of the movie, it's gonna be in story form, but I'm having actors perform the roles, and I'm having musical score and sound effects. So you look at it and go, oh, I get it, and I understand where you're going with this, and I'm intrigued enough where if somebody says this and they read the script, they're like, okay, we got to make this movie. And then I'm hoping, to use my new version of Free Enterprise and go, look, I've only written and directed one film, but I produce these movies. I've learned a lot about how movies are made. This is what I want to make. The problem with my movie is it's expensive. It's not cheap. And, again, it's a Hail Mary. A friend of mine says, well, Rob, why don't you go ahead and just go, make another $1 million or $2 million or $3 million independent movie to show that you can direct something again. And I'm like, what? You mean editing features and producing movies and all that? No. I mean, why do that? You know, I'll refine free enterprise. I'll show people. No one's ever seen it anyway, so a lot of people that I'm going to be going to are going to be seeing it for the first time. Judge me on that. I've done a recut of the movie as it exists. I've recomposed it to 239 to 1. Show that. Here's my movie. Here's what I want to make. Let's go. Here's the cast. I've never had a project that I had a cast. This has a cast. I'm drawing the cast into the storyboards. So you look at it when you watch it and go, oh yeah, those people are perfect for this movie. And yes, they are. And that's what I'm trying to do. So who knows? Now, could I make this movie independently? Yes. But it's very expensive, so it's a risk. I mean, it's not $100 million expensive. But, you know, I look at this as kind of a... It's kind of it's the kind of movie maybe John Carpenter would have made in the mid-'80s or something. It's like Big Trouble in Little China, kind of. It has nothing to do with Big Trouble in Little China. It's not that way, but it's kind of got that vibe, sort of. Something like, it's a horror fantasy, and with heavy religious overtones, and it's actually it's a religious horror fantasy combined with a hard-boiled detective story, sort of. That's what it is. But you know, you could make it independently, and maybe, you know, I think the best person to do it would be a streamer. And once I have it ready to go and have the whole package ready, I'll, you know, see if I can send it out. But that's what I would like. That's what I would like to do. That's my next project, and we'll see. And I'm hoping that people should make this. It'd make a great movie. It'd be visually very interesting. It'd be a lot of fun. So yeah, Dean, I hope it'll get made. I'll keep you guys posted. And if not, you know, I think the next thing that I'm going to do with my artist is turn the script into a graphic novel. That's what I'm going to do, I think, next with my actual storyboards, because they're good enough to be comic panels. So at least I'd like to think so. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but, you know, I think I have a pretty good handle on it. Let's see. Since I've been talking about this, maybe I'll show you a piece of artwork. Hang on, let me grab a piece of artwork that I haven't shown. And I'll throw it up there. I'll so you guys can get a feel of what this might look like. And let's see. As I'm going, there's a lot of things to go through here. I want to find something that doesn't give away too much of what this is. Well, maybe not. You know, I'm rifling through this stuff, but let's see if I could show. Well, no, I don't want to show that. I'm trying to look for something that doesn't give anything away. And there's a lot here that does. Like, I want to find something that doesn't. as I'm looking. Maybe I shouldn't. Yeah, I can't. You know what? I can't show any of this. Never mind. I'll get back to you on this. I'll find you something that I can show you. So I apologize. I didn't mean to be a tease. I can't give away. I don't want to give away anything because I want to have it all refined first. But I did show a clip the other night. Anyway, so where are we at? Where am I at? Who's next on this list? I'm sorry. I feel like I just was a total douche. The next person up is Ryan McLeod. Ryan McLeod says, "Greetings from Scotland, where the banter is great, but the weather is shite." Rob, I'd like to get your take on how studios, in particular Warner Brothers, have been measuring success of their franchise releases during the pandemic. Many of my fellow Dune fans online have been nervous for the potential of a sequel, given the HBO Max release affair. In my mind, WB have been measuring based on what a film could have earned outside of the pandemic, rather than what they actually did. In an example for either Mortal Kombat or Godzilla vs. Kong, in my mind's eye, I imagine a number cruncher behind a desk combining theater tickets, HBO Max views, social media mentions, merchandise sales, audience score, critic score, and other factors like these into a gigantic spreadsheet to estimate how much it could have made under normal circumstances, and planning the franchises further on that. Thankfully, in Mortal Kombat's case, it was a low-budget affair to begin with, so I don't expect the bar to be too high for that. Question is, do they increase the budget for bigger and better spectacle on the big screen, or keep the budget low and make it an HBO Max franchise? Time will tell. In Dune's case, one of those factors and variables would be prestige accolades. I don't think anyone is not assuming the film to not gain some form of recognition at movie awards in 2022, if not for Denis Villeneuve's direction, then certainly in other areas of design. I think that prestige accolades already play a part in greenlighting in this case. Why else would Denis Villeneuve been greenlight for an expensive project such as Dune when Blade Runner didn't exactly break the bank previously? Rob, how far off the mark am I on this, do you think? Are execs using some creative soothsaying to move forward, or are they concentrating on purely their cash flow and Chome Holdings as per usual? The Chome Company, I love that. Ryan from Scotland. P.S. The last time I wrote you expressing my excitement for Dune, you briefly said one of your acquaintances close to the production said it was a, quote, beautiful mess of a movie. Are you able to expand on this a little? Feel free to leave this PS section out if you read this letter on air and can't get into it to protect your source. I like to temper my expectations where I can, that's all. Maybe it plays into the above soothsaying. Cheers. Well, Ryan, a great letter. Thank you for writing in. So for those of you who might not have been here or might have heard it, I did review the screenplay that was by John Spates, Eric Roth, and Denis Villeneuve for Dune. All three are very accomplished screenwriters, and I thought the script for Dune was terrific. I thought it was terrific. I love the script for Dune, and I love the way it all worked out. Maybe I'll as a spoiler, it started out with Duncan Idaho basically orbit diving into Arrakis to go meet up with the Fremen or find out what was up with the Fremen, which I thought was a cool way to open the movie and a great way to introduce what Arrakis is and to introduce Duncan Idaho. So I love the script. And I think here's the thing about Dune. Dune is prestigious. It is very highbrow. It's considered one of the great tomes in all of science fiction. And I think when people, because industry people need buzzwords, and none of these motherfuckers are ever going to pick up Dune and read it. I mean, the actual book. So what they did was, from a perspective, if you look at a spreadsheet and go, okay, over the years, Dune has sold this many copies. It's been made, they've made it twice into once as a TV miniseries, once as a feature film, David Lynch. Now they're like, what is Dune like? Well, it's a giant family sprawling saga of warring. It's Game of Thrones in space. And it kind of is. I mean, in a way. You know, it's very much, you've got witches and technology. And so I can understand from a corporate perspective, from the spreadsheet, from the marketing perspective, from the executive halls of finance, Dune is a winner. It's a winner because it can be equated to a lot of other things. And people are like, oh, yeah. And it's a remake. It's been made twice. So it checks all the boxes of what Dune should possibly be as far as modern Hollywood is concerned. Add to that, you know what it has? It has the love and enthusiasm of a filmmaker who's wanted to make Dune for decades. Denis Villeneuve loves Dune. He's loved it for a long time. He's the perfect filmmaker. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to Blade Runner 2049, I think Blade Runner, even though Brian Fuller pointed out things that I'd never considered, but I think Blade Runner 2049 is, I'll admit it, one of the best sequels I've ever seen. Blade Runner was not a successful movie. It's never been a successful movie. And the idea, this is how sometimes, how far up their ass Hollywood is. I love Blade Runner 2049. It perhaps might have the greatest sound mix I've ever heard in a science fiction film, especially when seeing it in the proper venue. But Blade Runner was never successful. Most people, outside of imagination connoisseur status, not a lot of people know Blade Runner. I know we're all thinking, what? What do you mean no one knows? People don't. It was never a big hit. It's a cult movie at best. But we, in imagination connoisseur circles, we revere it. Audiences like, can you imagine some 15-year-old? Maybe people will be enamored of it, but it's not exactly, it doesn't exactly scintillate. I mean, I love Blade Runner. I contributed, for those of you who might want to read an essay I wrote about the box office of Blade Runner. You can, in the book, The Cyberpunk Nexus, Exploring the Blade Runner Universe, available now on Amazon. You can get it in Kindle form, or better yet, get the hardcover. Or not the hardcover, get the hard copy is what I meant to say. It doesn't come in hardcover. But yes, I contributed an essay. There's many different essays in that book, and it's a lot of fun to read, if I do say so myself. Shameless plug. But anyway, so the fact that it costs $170 million, I don't know what Warner Brothers was thinking, believe it or not. But that movie, talk about a movie that has love dripping from it, but is love enough to, make you money. Well, the thing about Dune is, if it works, it truly could be the next best franchise, the next big thing. I mean, they want to make a Bene Gesserit Sisterhood TV series. And of course, what they're planning, at least how it's been explained to me by industry insiders, that they were planning, if it all works out, to make 3 Dune movies. Dune, Dune Prophet, and Dune Messiah. Dune Messiah is the actual 3rd book in the... it's the second Dune book, but what they want to do is... Dune is only... So those of you who don't know... Dune, unlike David Lynch's Dune that's coming out is only the first half of the book Dune. Unlike Lynch's version, which covers the whole book, the Dune that's coming out is only the first half of the book. So the second half would be called Dune Prophet, that deals with the rise of Paul Atreides as the leader of the Fremen, as the Kwisatz Haderach. And then the 3rd movie would be Children of Dune, and it would be the end of Paul Atreides' story, which, for those of you who read the book, spoiler alert, doesn't end well for billions of people. But so that's what they would do. They would tell those 3 stories. That's the plan. It would be the Dune trilogy. And I guess it was hugely successful. You would then go on to make Children of Dune, God Emperor of Dune, Heretics of Dune, and Chapter House Dune, which is all of the 6 Dune books that Frank Herbert has written. So and great. I mean, yeah, there's the Kevin J. Anderson and Brian Herbert ad infinitum books, the Butlerian Jihad and all that stuff. You can read all that stuff, but to me, there are 6 Dune books. And the spin-off books, whatever. But to be fair, I haven't read them. I've read only the 6 books that James Herbert wrote. But they want to make the first 2 into 3 movies, which makes sense. So I think that Dune could be great. As far as it being a beautiful mess of a movie, when I hear that, I don't know who said it, and I don't know what they meant by it. But to me, there's a lot of people... I don't trust a lot of people's opinions about things because they don't necessarily know what they are. And I'm like, look, on one hand, things can exist. The experience that people have of movies is always subjective. That does not mean that people who have a subjective experience understand the objective greatness or goodness or mediocreness of a movie. I don't believe that everybody can necessarily recognize whether a movie is good or bad, at least in terms of its marketability. I don't trust a lot of people because there's a lot of people that don't have the knowledge to make that decision or even have the insight. But everybody has an opinion of a film, as well they should. It's their subjective opinion. So when I hear it's a beautiful mess of a movie, to me it's like, does that mean you were grasping all the concepts? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that person is an astute sci-fi moviegoer, because there's a lot of material in Dune that you can either love or like, or I don't know. I don't know how that's going to go. But look, they said it was a beautiful mess of a movie. I failed to see how it could be a mess after reading the screenplay. The screenplay is a very faithful adaptation of Dune. And Dune, hey, it might be a story people just don't buy into. We'll see. And I think I've also heard subsequent to that people have seen it and have loved it. But again, what does that mean? I just can't imagine if we're going to get the same sensibility that made Blade Runner 2049 and co-wrote the script that I read of Dune. I think it's going to be fucking great. I can't wait to see it. I hope that it's going to be theatrical only, at least for a while. I mean, why not? Why not put it out theatrically? We should be getting places other than the No Time to Die and Dune are my most eagerly awaited movies. Not in that order. Dune's my most eagerly awaited movie of 2020. I'm still waiting. Can't wait. And same with No Time to Die. So I think it's going to be, great. And what do I have that? What do I base that on? Well, all of Denis Villeneuve's oeuvre. I mean, everything from Prisoners to Sicario to Incendies to Blade Runner 2049. I mean, the guy's he's a world-class filmmaker. He classes up the joint. He's a smart filmmaker, and Dune needs that. But most of all, he's got the love, man. He's got the love. I think it's going to be awesome. And I hope it's awesome. I hope it does great bang-up business theatrically because I want to see Dune profit and I want to see Dune Messiah badly. Badly. So, yeah. I like this letter. Our friend Pedro Ferreira writes in and says, this is a review. Obviously, we lost Tawny Katane. We lost her. And she starred in a movie called The Perils of Gwendolyn in the Land of the Yik Yak, which you can get on Blu-ray. Pedro has reviewed a movie, and this movie he reviewed. When I decide to watch a film I've never watched before, I can never be certain what I've let myself in for. People may recommend a film like Gwendolyn, a.k.a. The Perils of Gwendolyn in the Land of the Yik Yak, 1984, as a fun cult movie, and I'll take that chance. Little did I realize how wacky director Just Jakin's last movie would be. By the way, architect of the Emmanuel franchise, directing Emmanuel and Emmanuel 2, Emmanuel 3, what a disappointment. Anyway, just saying. After years of directing erotic movies, Jakin tried to somewhat depart from the norm by adapting John Woolley's comic book Sweet Gwendolyn, a misadventure series with both gothic and bondage elements. The series involved Gwendolyn, a naive damsel in distress who had a habit of getting tied up and punished over the course of the stories. Oh yeah. Woolley worked with Jakin to develop the script. What evolved from this writing partnership was a script that both combined Indiana Jones with artistic nude situations or content you'd expect from Jakin's previous work. There can be no doubt the second half of the movie integrates the stylings of the Mad Max series with Ben-Hur, all with sexual elements an audience watching his earlier work would probably expect from this director. Completely produced by Para-France Films, the whole thing was a huge undertaking. It had the highest budget of any French film made yet, and the film was never a big enough hit worldwide to keep the studio from eventually going out of business. Seeing how both France and North America marketed the movie through theatrical trailers is interesting, with France presenting Gwendolyn as a typically art house film, while the U.S. pushes the Indiana Jones elements. Yeah, because God forbid we have anything that has sexual content in mainstream theaters. The movie sits in between, and it's nothing as expected. Its identity crisis is whether it should be an adventure or a bondage fantasy. Why not both? Jakin crafted a bizarre film, and perhaps it failed for precisely that reason. It's too crazy to make any sense. Gwendolyn, Tawny Katane, is on the trail of a rare butterfly to continue her lost father's research, which was set to make him famous. Arriving in China, she uncovers evidence her father was killed in the search of the fabled insect. Determined to succeed regardless of danger, she enlists the help of Navy mercenary Willard, played by Brent Huff. Along with her loyal maid Beth, Zabu Brightman, the three of them take a journey of perilous adventures from the cannibal tribe called the Kiops through to the dangerous land of the Yik Yak, where they meet the underground people of Pakao. Can Gwendolyn find the rare butterfly that eluded her father, or will she fall foul of Picaho's queen, Bernadette Lawfort, someone who seeks to control all civilizations? The plot, when you look at what the characters are after, is ridiculous. They're putting their lives in danger continuously, all for a rare butterfly. All for this butterfly? I mean, it better be worth it. They at least acknowledge the silliness of their end goal. It's just as well the butterfly remains a MacGuffin because Just Jakin, what a name to have, has created a crazy yet highly entertaining movie. The location shooting is lovely and the set design is handled extremely well, especially in the second half of the movie where the characters end up in the land of the Yik Yak. The film at this point presents an underground society run by women in bondage gear. like my Saturday nights. Looking like rejects from a Mad Max movie, yet most of the time wearing less, Jakin uses the screen space to present his scantily clad extras as an art exhibit of fetishes. It's especially noticeable during a scene where a disguised Gwendolyn enters a room of half-naked prisoners, all in different kinds of torture apparati. The dangerous yet creative set design and costumes was thanks to concept designers Francois Schouten and Claude Renard, whose brief was to be as big and wild as possible. It is worth pointing out their original concepts were even more over the top and surreal, but budget constraints reined them in. Needless to say, the release of Gwendolyn was for many the first interaction they'd had with bondage, and the film's main legacy to this day is that it made bondage mainstream, just how Jakin's first movie, Emmanuelle, explored the boundaries of sex in film. Jakin and the concept artists, by the way, the Emmanuelle series coming to 4K in Germany. Yes, they are pre-ordered. Jakin and the concept artists are successful in creating a living, breathing underground society that conforms to the dictatorial rule of ancient Roman culture. What I totally wasn't expecting was a chariot race where the female slaves are the horses. It, of course, makes no sense whatsoever. Why do slaves keep pulling the chariots when they can just pull themselves free and make a run for it? But it's an amazing sight to watch. There does indeed seem to be a lot pulled from Roman history, with Gwendolyn also taking part at one point in a gladiatorial battle arena. I mean, come on, don't you want to see this movie? The cast, of course, vary considering the leads are a combination of both American and French actors. Katane is okay as the naive but strong-willed woman out to continue her father's work, but she seems a little lost at times with everything that's going on. Huff is also fine as the scoundrel Willard, but their interplay feels forced and stilted, not helped by Jakin's mediocre dialogue. The nature of shooting in France with mostly French actors meant that apart from Katane and Huff, most of the dialogue was spoken in French, which was then later dubbed into English. As with most foreign movies, it's extremely noticeable even with good actors like Zabu Brightman. She does fare much better as Beth. Brightman's character is cartoonish and over the top, accentuated by her helmeted hairstyle, but even with all this working against her, Zabu easily outshines her co-stars due to having more acting experience. There's a scene where she's had enough and starts slapping her lead cannibal captive around by storming off. While the dialogue is iffy and the looped sound does her no favors, she still makes a good impression. I just wish they'd synced her dialogue better. Bernadette Lafont fares worse, and she is great in the role, playing the authoritarian queen who sees Gwendolyn as a threat to her status of beauty. Lafont clearly couldn't or wasn't asked to deliver her dialogue in English, which is a shame as she is terrific in her role as the queen. Likewise, Jean Rougerie's role as Darcy, a character from the original comic, is entertaining, as is the scheming scientist who's found a way to steal authority from the queen, yet requires Gwendolyn to fulfill his plans. He's just let down by the looping, which is odd considering Rougerie could speak English. Music by Pierre Bachelet is amazing, going from exotic synth embraces to the journey to the ethereal choir of Picajo's Destiny. The music industry is poorer without him. Ultimately, the production is polished and extravagant for a foreign movie with some impressive stunt choreography, and I suppose even the childish humor will appeal to some. As a whole, it all makes you forget the plot holes, like what's the payoff with the crystals, the underdeveloped plot regarding the volcano as a weapon, or why the film ends on such an anticlimactic matter, with the characters penniless and stranded in the middle of nowhere. For this to be Jakin's last film, he certainly ended on a rather impressive and unique note, even if the plot, with its need for exploitation and theatrics, means it comes across as more a B-movie with art house direction and a decent budget. The difficulties of marketing such a movie, from its themes and sexual bondage, some gratuitous violence, along with a lack of familiar star names in it. Gwendolyn is perhaps tonally out of step with what worldwide audiences would be willing to sit through. Well, you got that right, Pedro. As mentioned at the beginning of the review, the film doesn't know what it wants to be, trying to pander to adventure fans while pandering to fans of Jakin's earlier film, Emmanuelle. I think what it's trying to be is awesome. In what would be Jakin's last movie, he, along with author John Willie, have managed to successfully adapt the misadventures of its titular heroine to the big screen. Gwendolyn isn't the smartest movie made, and I can understand its lack of appeal outside its own country. The source material is absurd pulp as it is, and the movie manages to retain all that for better or worse. The set designs and costumes grand, the story nonsense, the characters cartoonish, while the film never shies away from its casual sexual references. What then should be a complete disaster becomes an underground cult classic, An oddity that should be B-movie, yet has been professionally produced with the best resources France filmmaking then had to offer. It's a mad movie, but never boring and a lot easier to find than that damn butterfly. It's certainly worth watching at least once out of interest. And in case you forgot what movie this is either Gwendolyn or The Perils of Gwendolyn in the Land of the Yik Yak. So all I can tell you is that you should see it. Because boy, let me tell you, you're not gonna be sorry, or maybe you will be. I don't know. Maybe you could be. Maybe. Hard to say. Let's see what you're saying here. I know I still have a Willow Yang thing to read, which I haven't read. I keep promising to read it. I know. Willow says, regarding the Titanic debate, Mythbusters have tested it out and concluded that Jack could have survived if he had thought to tie Rose's life jacket to the board to increase buoyancy. I guess the idea didn't come to them under the stressful circumstances. Well, it's the ongoing debate. Why didn't Jack just crawl up with Rose? Well, I'll tell you why. He's a gentleman. He's a gentleman. Back in the day, you wouldn't do that. I mean, even as a matter of survival, chivalry stepped in, and the character of Jack knows what's up, and he does what he has to do. He does what he believes, and I think also the stress of the situation. But Jack's a gentleman. Man Butt sends in a tip and says, what are your overall thoughts on The Thing? I love The Thing. And in particular, with regards to the practical effects in that film, especially considering Rob Bottin was only 22 when he worked on it. At the time, The Thing was one of the most difficult practical makeup effects films ever made. It came out in the wake of American Werewolf in London, which was the very first film to win an Academy Award for its makeup effects. That went to Rick Baker. Very interesting because Rob Bottin had done The Howling before The Thing. Great transformation effects. And yes, Rob Bottin was very young and the pressure on him was astonishing. And I can only imagine what he had to do himself, to what his crew was doing. I mean, if you know what I'm saying, to get through that, it must have been rough. But I think The Thing is astonishing. I think some of the effects hold up better than other effects. There's a lot of goofy things, but you know what? I think audiences are so used to CG now that when you actually see practical effects and real spewing blood, it certainly was a glorious thing to watch. I mean, go back and watch Siskel and Ebert's review of The Thing. They didn't like it very much, but they'll talk about the gore, and I mean, we live for that shit. I walked out of The Thing, and yeah, it's a downer of a movie, but it's so awesome. I love The Thing. Love it, man. But Sub McShave sends in a tip and says, FYI, a new report suggests that the first 3 episodes of Wheel of Time will be released in the end of November, with the rest of the 5 episodes having a weekly release ending just before the end of the year, keeping Rob updated. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle souls, however you identify across these 28 known galaxies, Stubble McShave is the world's biggest Wheel of Time fan. And I think I've asked him to do it. He said he would do it. We're going to do a weekly review show, me and Stubble, of Wheel of Time. We're going to review it, but nobody is more excited to see anything, I think maybe in the history of humanity, than Stubble is to see the Wheel of Time series. So he is an imagination connoisseur par excellence, a foundational member of the Post-Geek Singularity, and the biggest Wheel of Time fan in all the world, which is pretty damn exciting. Mr. Tickletrunk sends in a super chat. Why, thank you, sir. You are very supportive of the channel. It is much appreciated. Space Butt. We have Man Butt. Now we have Space Butt. Space Butt sends in a tip and says, what do you predict the UFO task force will present to Congress on June 1st? Do you think these aerial vehicles are being manned by aliens? Did you know that high-profile senators are taking this shit quite seriously? So, yes. What Space Butt is referring to is a report that's going to be delivered to Congress from a special group that was convened to examine unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAPs, not UFOs. And the thing about this is it's not just like Project Blue Book. There seems to be a wealth of evidence, including satellite data, telemetry data, not just camera footage from planes. I mean, a lot of people have been saying, debunkers are saying, no, it's just bokeh. It's bokeh on the camera lens. Well, you have a lot of really trained people, including commercial pilots and military pilots, who talk about this stuff. I mean, yes, where's the physical evidence? Why have only certain people seen these things? I mean, I don't know. I guess if you're flying over the ocean a lot, that would explain it. But, hard to say. What do I think is going to happen? From what I've understood, and I've been reading a lot about this, I do find it very interesting that suddenly this idea of real UFOs has been slowly injected into the public consciousness. And because it's taken so long, we're all like, yeah, okay. I mean, how do you control a population if you're playing a real long-term game? I mean, listen, if you think about it, forget the idea of aliens and all that. Think about the fact that if irrefutable evidence was given that we are or have been visited by some kind of, whether they're extraterrestrials, whether they're people from another dimension, whether they're human beings from the future, whatever the ramifications are of this, it would be so earth-shaking to our population that it would be, I can't even begin to fathom what might happen. But what do? You do what everybody else does. You inject this information into the public consciousness. You get people literally, they're like, yeah. The idea, I was reading a Twitter thread. I retweeted it. So if you go to my Twitter page, yesterday I retweeted this thread where this guy is actually talking about the actual evidence that's now, we've compiled it. And at the end of his tweet, he's lamenting the fact that we should be astonished by all this. And we're all like, well, if you want to think about it in conspiracy terms, yeah, they've already injected all this information. Like if they came out and said, we're not alone in the universe, we now have irrefutable evidence that there is technology that's at work on this planet that is extraterrestrial. Somebody said it's 1,000 years more advanced than what we have. I think in this day and age, the way we are as a culture, people would be like, And that's because I think they've done a really good job slowly injecting this idea that this report's going to happen. Whether the report is going to happen or not, this idea had to be presented to the public at some point because it was going to get out. 20 years ago, they wouldn't have to worry. But the way social media is now, some overzealous person, it doesn't matter how much money you're paying people or what kind of NDAs. Someday, if this stuff's real and we have possession of it, like a Bob Lazar situation, and there's actually people that have been working on this technology for decades. One picture with a cell phone camera, it's getting to the point where this has to be admitted. But I don't know. I'm Space Butt. I want to look, if I could see aliens or know that there's proof of alien activity, I'd want to see it. I'd want to have a first contact situation. I hope it doesn't go Independence Day, War of the Worlds. I think it would be more interesting. But if these aliens are really here and they're hanging out, flying their machines, I hope what happens is we get trickle-down power and trickle-down technology from them, because it would only help us. Mr. Tickletrunk says, we come here to listen to you speak. Don't apologize for giving the people what they want. Well, that's very nice of you, Mr. Tickletrunk. Thank you so much. Benzin says, I could listen to your videos all day, Rob. You have so much knowledge about the industry. This woke agenda has gone too far now. Another great show. Well, as this investor, very smart individual points out, a woke agenda is not what's going to create love. You got to create love in your audience. That's what the whole point is to do. And those observations he made, he laid it right out. If you're not running your franchise that way, and I mean, the comics industry is already, it's hit hard, but the comics that are being written, at least in DC and Marvel terms, where's the good stuff? I mean, independent publishers are still doing good stuff, but even as a way, as he astutely pointed out, most of the things that they're adapting for the MCU have come about in the last 10 years. Riri Williams, for an example, Miss Marvel. And now, is anybody going to be making any, that debacle with the New Warriors? I mean, like, come on, man. Comic book characters are supposed to be fantasy characters. I don't want to see characters that look like me. If I want to work out and look like Chris Hemsworth in Thor, that's great. But he looks like Chris Hemsworth in Thor. I want to look up to him. And I don't. The idea, I don't even know who came up with, okay, we're going to make we're going to make our superheroes inclusive, so we're going to make them look like you, the ordinary person. Where did that idea even come from? I like the idea that comic book characters are fantasy characters in every way, that they're powerful. That's the whole point. I don't believe that some schleprock, that some overweight person in a costume has any chance of saving the universe. And is that because I'm a white, cis, middle-aged male? Perhaps, but what is a comic book character? It was designed to be a fantasy. And if you're going to take the fantasy out of something that is inherently supposed to be a fantasy, I think you've lost. But so thanks for that. Andrew Christie sends in a tip and says, that article was incredible, Rob. Oh, I'm glad to hear you say that, sir. I didn't know whether people would be digging it or not. By the way, again, many thanks to my industry guru, somebody who is so high ranking, I can't believe they don't give me the time of day, or that they give me the time of day. I can't believe they don't not give me the time of day. And that person sent it to me unsolicited, and I can't thank them enough for it because, man, that article has more insight in it than I wish it should be. I think that article needs to be read by every single... Well, this person probably did send it all over the Hollywood, so maybe it will be read, but understood. Andrew Christie said, the article was incredible, Rob. I love it most when you cover these topics. You're so right about the cosplay connection. Movies alone aren't cutting it anymore. Not only do we want to watch our heroes, we want to be those heroes. Yes, hence the rise of MMORPGs, games like League of Legends, Fortnite. I mean, we are the central. That's why VR is going. We're going to be the central protagonists of these stories. You're physically going to get to play games. I mean, how awesome is that? I mean, gaming treadmills when you can be completely immersed and move around and play with your friends across the planet. I mean, it's amazing. It's going to be amazing. We want to be those heroes. You're absolutely right. Andrew Christie goes on to say, it's because everything is becoming so much more immersive that fans feel so close to actually being in that world that they want to be a part of it. Who doesn't want to fight alongside Cap or Soups or be them in your own gamified movie? It's coming. You, sir, are 100% correct. And you know what? That's what creates the love. And anybody, it's amazing to me, like Chris Gore pointed out. And by the way, if you want to look at that interview with Chris, I thought it was one of the best interviews he's ever given. There's a channel on YouTube that usually annoys the fuck out of me, to be honest, but I watch all the videos, called Film Courage. But they interviewed Chris, and I watched it, and I thought it was really interesting what he said. The fact that the Star Wars sequel franchise, those movies, was malpractice on the part of the studio. And look, I've said this before. I don't blame Kathleen Kennedy. I think Kathleen Kennedy is one of the great producers in Hollywood. I think Disney had an agenda, that their agenda was they thought that Star Wars was bulletproof, because from a corporate standpoint, they don't sit there and go, well, what do you think? What do you think if we make a sequel trilogy of movies and we have Han, Luke, Leia, Chewie, R2, 3PO, what is the one thing we must give our audience? What is the one thing? To see those characters together in a movie, in a scene, fighting together. They never did that. That is perhaps the largest bungling of the Star Wars franchise ever. And why did that happen? I don't have any firsthand knowledge of this. Because Disney did not want to rely on these characters. They wanted to create new characters. They figured Star Wars as a brand will carry us through. We'll bring in the old characters. Han and Chewie, done dirty. R2-D2, done dirty. I even think Leia, and who has done the dirtiest? Luke Skywalker. I mean, if you're a kid today watching the Star Wars movies, and I will say this again, I've said it a million times before. If you're a kid and you go from Return of the Jedi to Episode 7, you're not going to be waiting. You're not going to have any nostalgia about, oh my God, I haven't seen a Star Wars movie since 2005. It's been a decade. No, you're going to binge them over the course of a week, or a little over a week. And when you go from Jedi to Force Awakens, you're going to be like, when did my favorite characters become so stupid? How did my heroes allow the First Order to rise? How were they able to build Starkiller Base and firing distance to the heart of the Republic? Even if I was 8 years old, I would have been like, what is this shit? Why aren't our character? Why is R2-D2 got a tarp on him in the fucking corner this whole movie? I mean, think about it. If you watch those movies in order, I think The Force Awakens is easily the worst of the films if you watch them all. Because once you watch The Force Awakens, you already think the rest are shit. So I'm hard-pressed to believe you'd watch episodes 8 and 9, which are just gobbledygook. But if you go from Return of the Jedi to The Force Awakens, which I can't imagine what that's like. I mean, I can't think of something more demoralizing and soul-crushing than having that happen. Anyway, so there you go. But yes, people want to be these characters. That's why games like Battlefront 2 are so rad. Or when you're playing Squadron, you know, you're in the driver's seat. You're flying an X-Wing, which is awesome. Sheriff Carl says, what about love? What about love? Don't you want someone to care about you? To quote Mercer Island's finest, excluding yours truly. Nice take on what's wrong with these big corporations that control all the shit we love. There's something they forgot. Yeah, can you imagine? All you entertainment conglomerates, love should go on your your spreadsheet. Is there love in this? Are the people that are making this project, is there love there? Is the audience are they going to feel the love? Can you feel the love tonight? Well, I don't know. If you can't, you fucked up your franchise. And, you know, I loved it. Mr. Intellectual is here. I love Mr. Intellectual's comments. Long term, consolidation often leads to higher prices for consumers. It hints at a future with fewer, broader streaming options. There is a Japanese saying, Sir Rob, the competitor is our friend and the customer is our enemy. There will be repercussions. That might be, but still, there could be repercussions. But I don't know. I mean, I think that people want to feel the love, and what I thought the article really did a good job in pointing out is that where the biggest, most high-profile elements, like the Star Wars sequel trilogy, fail, you're not. One Mandalorian shows up, and all of a sudden, baby Grogu is in everyone's house. You're only one good movie away from revitalizing your franchise. Christopher Eccleston comes back, and boom, Doctor Who's put on the map. Then followed up by David Tennant, and oh my God, the whole world's Doctor Who fans. They'd never heard of Doctor Who before 2005, and look where they're at now. Of course, now you're back to where you started, which is too bad, which is kind of a bummer. Piano ASMR for sleep, anxiety, and relaxation. I think that article on love applies to YouTubers as well. 100 viewers that love you or your content is exponentially more valuable than 2 million that don't. I would tend to agree with that. But does that translate to dollars for your favorite YouTuber? I celebrate the love. Yub nub. Brandon Sheehy sends in a tip and says, Rob, hear me out on this. A premise where the 1960s Batman and Robin, as their ages then, are transported into a more grounded world like the current DCEU via the multiverse angle. A clever script could pay homage to the original, which is still beloved. You could do that. How about the animated movies? That was pretty cool. You know, the animated where Shatner played Two-Face. I loved hearing Adam West and Burt Ward come back. I think that could be kind of cool, but I don't know who you would get to play the 60s Batman and Robin. I don't know, man. Cable Bomb sends in a super chat and says, do you like Meow Mix, bro? Meow, 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 meow. I came from a cat household, so I don't like Meow Mix as much as I like Milk-Bone dog biscuits. Yes, I've tried both, but if given a choice, I'd prefer not to eat Meow Mix. But is that a euphemism that I'm not understanding? Not sure. DKG Custom says, let's crowdfund and make the Rob UK tour happen. The vast profits selling it to a hot streaming service can finance your next film with a free enterprise 4K release. Ask what your fans think. Yeah, I think if I was going to crowdfund, I'd want to crowdfund my comic book Living in Infamy to get it back in print. Call me dude. I would love to go on the European tour. Robservations International, the Robservation Nation, nations all over the world, you know. One planet, many nations, something like that. We'd have to come up with good catchphrases and swag and merchandise. Be awesome. Call Me Dude says, if Superman can be black, can Uhura from Star Trek be white? No. No, she can't. Because you can turn white characters into black characters if you want, but you cannot do the reverse. That is a universal truth. And by the way, no one is going to change the color of my first crush with those green earrings and that beautiful chocolate brown skin. Come on now. Nichelle Nichols, I'm telling you, to be a young boy and to watch Mirror Mirror for the first time and to see that exposed midriff, I didn't know why. I just wanted to kiss her belly button. Let me tell you. So no. No, Call Me Dude. You cannot do it. No. And by the way, why would you want to? The Spanker says, do you think in our lifetime man will explore beyond our solar system? And do you think we'll have to wait hundreds and or thousands of years for them to return? Maybe make a 5 or 10 year round trip to Proxima Centauri, or heck, even the Andromeda Galaxy. Oh, we ain't never going to the Andromeda Galaxy. I don't want to say never, but probably not. I mean, even in The Expanse, the show, we're not. It's in the 23rd century, right? We're not even out of the solar system by then. It's just look. If those UFOs turn out to be true with those kind of propulsion systems, maybe, but I don't think so. And if we do get out of the solar system, where the hell are we going to go? I mean, Proxima Centauri is still light years away. And when you think about how fast a light year is, the speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. Can you imagine? 186,000 miles per second. It takes light, the light of the sun that is illuminating some of us right now. The light of the sun takes 8 minutes to get here from the sun. Light, sunlight, and heat from the sun. 8 minutes to get to Earth. That means all the sunlight you've ever seen has come from the past. That's amazing. Now imagine how far away a light year. That means you're traveling at 186,000 miles per second. 60 seconds in a minute. 60 minutes in an hour. 24 hours in a day. Think about how far away, traveling at that speed, it's going to take us to get to Proxima Centauri. That's a long time. That's a long distance cover. We don't have anything, any technology. I mean, look at it. Took, Voyagers 1 and 2 to get out of the heliosphere, get into the heliosphere, 40 fucking years? 40 plus years? 45 years? Just to get out of the solar system. They were launched in the 70s. So, yeah. Louis Terrazas sends in, I like Louis, you're here all the time, man. I appreciate it. Louis says, Rob, please indulge me. I'm not a super Dune fan, or have I read the book, but the movie is my most anticipated film of the year. I know you explained it a bit here and on Campia, but please elaborate. Why is it deemed by Hollywood as so hard to film or produce? Ooh, it's a good question. Well, first of all, the way the book Book Dune is structured, it's not like an omniscient narrator. It's like journals and things like that. But the reason being is part of Dune's appeal is the world building. You're dealing with ecosystems, and you're dealing with, they talk about politics, and Frank Herbert does a lot, like, for instance, I guess you'd call it the consortium. It's not really countries, but the Landsrad. All the families of Westeros, all of those, they're like part of the Landsrad, and there's all kinds of politics going on, and there's the Padishah Emperor, Shaddam IV of the known universe, and the machinations there, and then you've got the Bene Gesserit Sisterhood, which are they're basically witches, and then you have the Guild Navigators, which are being mutated by can I say it without the spice? There's all kinds of different factions going on. And in order to understand it all, it's just incredibly dense. There's lots of world building that has to be done in order for you to understand things. And that's what's really tough, is understanding who or what, who's doing what to whom. And I have to tell you, what's really interesting about the script, unlike Lynch's Dune, they don't even deal with the Padishah Emperor. You don't meet him, like you don't meet Jose Ferrer like you do in Dune. You don't even see any guild navigators in this version of the movie. None of that. You see none of that stuff because they're leading up to that. Basically, what you are watching is the script of Dune deals with the conflict between the Harkonnens and the Atreides, and basically two families. and they're fighting over basically they're fighting over production of the most valuable spice. Spice is the most valuable product in the universe, and one family had it, and then over the course of in the course of being in cahoots with the Padishah Emperor, there's the good family and the bad family, and there are forces allying themselves together in order to destroy the good family, and the good family doesn't know what's going on, and at the same time, in the midst of the good family, they might have their son might be the Messiah, and might be the foretold being, the Kwisatz Haderach, that is the supreme being, the super being that is going to deliver the galaxy, and it goes from there. But it's a really difficult, dense mythology to check out. So that's why it's hard to produce. It's hard to distill all of that into a screenplay and into a movie that you can figure out. Dash Dees says, "Hi Rob, I loved your stream with Miss Creel yesterday. Oh, that was so much fun. You guys are so in depth with it. It blew me away and made plant shopping at Home Depot tolerable." I've gone to Home Depot plant shopping with Elizabeth, and I know exactly what you mean. I love women, but there's one thing I cannot do. There's few things in life that drive me crazy. Going clothes shopping with women is one of them. There's only one time, I will leave that person nameless, but there's only one person I could ever tolerate going shopping with, a woman, and it was only at a specific store, because the store had other things in it that interested me. But, and shopping for plants is second only to shopping for clothes. And now that's not being sexist. It just bores. I can't hang. Gerard Leon sends in a super chat and says, "Roberto, happy belated birthday to a fellow Taurus. Mine is actually tomorrow. Stay metal." Yes. Well, tomorrow night is tonight and tomorrow night are episodes 3 and 4 of my new show, Robservations Midnighter, which is a show that's all about you. I, of course, bring on imagination connoisseurs. We've met a few. It's been great. I didn't know how it would work. I'm trying to keep the show to 2 hours, but it starts at midnight. It will be on tonight. And basically, I have a topic to discuss, but no one's so far discussed the topic, really. But I've just met you guys. All of you imagination connoisseurs, everyone's welcome to come on the channel. And don't get cheeky with me. Don't think you're going to moon me or anything. I can cut you off before that shit happens. But it's been great to get to know a lot of you and to put names to faces. AIC Dragon sends in a super chat. Says, "I don't know if he's the optimal choice, but Nick Cage was channeling Adam West Batman as Big Daddy." Oh, he totally was. He definitely has the line delivery cadence down. Not a bad idea, but then people would probably say, "Why is Nick Cage copying Big Daddy from, and Robin's Hit Girl?" Who knows? From Kick-Ass. But you never know. I think you're right, though. Sheriff Carls comes back again and says, "Fuck, man, you got me rolling on your sequel trilogy shit. R2 stuck in the corner with a fucking tarp over him. Am I wrong? I mean, here's the guy that's the hero. Here's the astromech droid who's the hero of 6 previous movies. And listen, man, we got to sell some BB-8, so we're going to get rid of old R2 now because he's old and we need something new for the kids. Shit, dude, you totally nailed it. Those are such objectively bad movies. I don't give a shit what Campia says. The Force Awakens." The Force Awakens, indeed. It awakens the entire movie-going audience. Tony Reyes says, "Rob, I'm not sure if you're into auto racing. The Monaco F1 Grand Prix is this weekend, and it reminds me of my favorite auto racing film, John Frankenheimer's 1966 classic, Grand Prix." Dude, I love Grand Prix. There's also Le Mans. Question, do you have a favorite auto racing film? I think it might be Grand Prix, because Frankenheimer in the 60s, John Frankenheimer's output in the 60s was like beyond reproach. Grand Prix, Seconds, The Manchurian Candidate, Birdman of Alcatraz, The Train. That guy was knocking that shit out of the park. 7 Days in May. Hell yeah. 60s John Frankenheimer, man. Wow. And even when, he fell into alcohol and drug abuse in the 70s, but he came back. Well, he did French Connection 2, Prophecy, the monster movie. But, he came back. Like, he even did things like 52 Pickup, Roy Scheider, Anne Margaret, and John Glover Frankenheimer is the fucking man. And in the 60s, I would say that's probably Grand Prix is probably one of them. I do like F1. You know, I love Ford versus Ferrari. I thought that was great. I love car racing movies. Cold Trickle, Tom Cruise in Days of Thunder. I love auto racing movies. Are rubbing is racing. But Grand Prix, if for nothing else than the way it was shot, unbelievable. Fernando Barrero says, Rob, I give you credit. After a midnight show, I really enjoyed it. By the way, thanks for coming on last night, Fernando. And 3 shows today, you must be exhausted. Well, I have another show. I have another show coming on at 7 with Polly, and I will be on Latino Slant. So come over to Latino Slant's channel. Polly is a great streamer. I love his channel. Subscribe to Latino Slant. I will be on there at 7. And then I will be doing Robservations Midnighter tonight, episode 3 of Midnighter. So come on down. I give you credit. After a midnight show, I really enjoyed it. And 3 shows today, you must be exhausted. As for all the stories of UFOs lately, even 60 Minutes had a segment on it. What do you think of UFOs actually stationing themselves under the sea? Well, as a UFO fan, I mean, come on. Where else would you hide? We don't know what's at the bottom of the sea, and if you've got UFOs that can function in Earth's atmosphere, I think the bottom of the sea would be the place to be. Who's going to find you? You know, we don't even know. We don't really have this bottom of the sea mapped. You could hide down there. Who's going to be the wiser? You know that James Cameron went down to the bottom of the Marianas Trench because he's like, I bet they're down there. But, yeah, I think that I would, if I was an alien race, I'd be hanging out there. So absolutely. Well, listen, on that note, everyone, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kind souls, all of you from across the great 28 known galaxies, I'm going to bring an end to this chat. I got a lot more letters to read, including the Willow Yang letter that I keep forgetting about until now, but I will, in fact, read it. So, Willow, don't you fear. Don't you fret. I still have great big love for you. Don't think I don't. But anyway, I want to thank all of you for supporting this channel via Super Chats and tips and sending me great letters to read. If you want to send me a letter, you can do so free of charge at the Burnettwork.net website. There's so much content on the Burnettwork.net website. All your letters, all kinds of stuff is there. Go there and send me a letter, and I'll read it. Make it a good one. And if you don't want me to read it on the air, but you just want to send me something, if you want to send me fan mail or you want to pillory me hardcore, you can. You can tell me anything. I read it all. I will not hold it against you. The Burnettwork.net. And you can do that. I want to thank my moderating staff. I want to thank Mike Bodden. I want to thank The Richard. I want to thank Darren Seeley. I want to thank Joshua Levesque. Let's see who else is here. Luis X. Sparrow. 2 shows in a row, Luis. You're a machine. Thank you so much. I think I got everybody. Did I get everybody? Justin Toner's here too. It's a party. It's like being at county. When you're at county, it's always a party because you know everybody. Anyway, that's a little rap lyric for you. So anyway, I am going to tell you that every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I remind everybody that in less than 90 minutes, I will be on Latino Slant's channel. I will be with Polly, who's a great, great man. And we will be streaming and having fun. Come over to his channel, subscribe, and we will keep this party bumping. Okay, push it. By the way, I'd be remiss if I did not mention that Duran Duran's new single, Invisible, dropped today, and it has a video made by an artificial intelligence named Huxley. Aldous Huxley. I like it. Check it out. It's on YouTube, and it's the first single off their new album, Future Past. And if you are a music fan, man, there are a lot of heavy hitters involved. I'm a huge Duran Duran fan. Their last album, Paper Gods, came out 6 years ago. And I was a big fan of that. I saw that tour. Elizabeth actually took me to see Duran Duran on that tour. It was great. And I love that album. So I can't wait to hear this whole album. And yes, I'm going to buy the CD. Elizabeth's like, why don't you just download it? I'm like, come on, man, it's Duran Duran. They're going to have some cool deluxe CD, you know? Got to get that shit, right? Order it from Amazon UK. Yeah. Anyway, on that note, thanks for being here. And I'll see you in an hour and a half. Oh, actually, in 80 minutes on Latino Slants channel. Party on, Wayne. Party on, Garth.